My name is Angelina. I'm 24 years old, living in Houston and currently in my final year studying economics. 3 weeks ago, I woke up in the ICU after a serious car accident. While I was still breathing through a tube, I received a text message from my own father. "I borrowed your college fund for now. Don't tell your mom." At that moment, I didn't yet realize that the entire sum, over $48,000 that I had saved over 4 years through scholarships, part-time jobs, and every dollar I could manage, had vanished completely. And he was out boating with my brother. Have you ever been betrayed by the very person you trusted most? At your weakest, did they show you their coldest? If this story touches something inside you, please share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe to the channel so we can uncover the truth they've buried for years. Because what I'm about to share might change the way you see the word family. I grew up in a family where, from a very young age, I understood that love wasn't distributed equally. My family wasn't poor, but we never had much to spare either. My father, Richard, was quiet but calculating. My mother, Elaine, was a night shift nurse at a state hospital nearly 40 miles from home. She was gentle, patient, and always exhausted. For most of my childhood, the person I saw most at home was my dad. And Thomas, my older brother. Thomas is 3 years older than me. From the time we were kids, he was always the pride of my father, though I never understood why. He didn't like school, dropped out of college after just 1 year because it was too stressful, got arrested once for illegal street racing, and even made mom pawn her wedding ring once to pay off a fine. But dad always had an excuse for him. He's a boy. Boys make mistakes. What matters is that he gets back up. Me. I wasn't allowed to make a single mistake. I studied hard, earned full scholarships from freshman through junior year at Texas State University. Since I was 16, I had worked weekends at a neighborhood bookstore. Every cent I earned, I carefully saved into a joint account under my name and my dad's, because back then I was too young to open an account on my own, and he told me it was to protect you from financial missteps. Financial missteps. Looking back, that phrase tastes bitter. Whenever I brought home a perfect report card, Dad would glance at it and nod. Good, but don't overdo it. Girls shouldn't be too ambitious. But when Thomas got a trial job at a construction firm run by one of Dad's old friends, he threw a dinner party like his son had just been hired by NASA. Once, I won first place in a statewide public speaking competition and was given an award in front of hundreds. I sent Dad the video hoping for some recognition. His only reply was a short message: "You'd look better if you dressed more modestly." I didn't respond. When I brought up the idea of studying abroad for a semester, he opposed it furiously. "You planning to run away from the family? Who's going to help out here? Thomas is out there looking for a decent job and you just want to chase your own thing." I stayed quiet like I always did. But I still applied. And I got the offer to study in London. The night before I left, Mom slipped $500 into my wallet without saying a word. She just hugged me tightly in the kitchen, her tears soaking through my shoulder. Throughout my 3 years of college, I studied, worked as a tutor, waited tables, and during summers I took data entry jobs at an insurance company to save up for senior year, the 1 year my scholarship wouldn't cover fully. Every bit of my earnings went into that joint savings account with Dad. I once thought about separating it, but he warned me that doing so would cost me student tax benefits. I listened, as I trusted him. I used to think that if I did everything right, worked hard, and didn't cause trouble, my parents would see my worth. But they didn't. I still remember one evening after a long day at the library, I called home to wish Dad a happy birthday. Music was blasting in the background. Thomas throwing a party, no doubt. Dad picked up, clearly tipsy. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said. "Sorry I can't be there. I just picked up a part-time job at the campus library. Good pay, should help me save a bit more for senior year." I smiled, hoping to hear something warm in return. But he just laughed. "You always worry about money. Just study. Why think about all that? Thomas, now that's a carefree kid." I gripped the phone tighter, swallowing down a sigh. The accident happened one evening in Houston. A taxi slammed into the side of my car while I was driving home from the library. I don't remember much, only that I woke up with an 4 in my arm, my back aching, and the doctor telling me that the insurance wouldn't cover everything because the trip was personal and not under the student coverage plan. I wasn't too worried. I still had over $48,000 saved up. But just a few hours later, when I checked my bank app on my phone, my account was empty. Gone. Not a single dollar left. And then my father's text appeared, like a knife straight to the heart. I borrowed your college fund for now. Don't tell your mom. No check-in. No apology. Just a dry, cowardly message running from responsibility. And there I was, lying in a hospital bed, unable to sit up, in pain with every breath. The 4 dripped slowly into my veins like a quiet reminder that everything I had worked for over the past few years had just been thrown away by the very man who called himself my father. I didn't cry. I just felt cold. Very cold. But somewhere deep inside me something began to stir. A small, clear voice rising up. You don't owe them silence anymore. I was discharged after 11 days of internal injury monitoring. Mom flew in from the next state as soon as she heard. Dad only showed up on the 6th day, bringing a wilted bouquet and a cheap box of cookies. He stayed less than 20 minutes, asked, "You heading home soon?" and left, saying he was busy with work. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the harsh hospital lights, silent like stone. No one in the family mentioned money. No one asked how I'd finish my senior year. It was as if the college fund had never existed. Back at my apartment, I spent the first 3 days sleeping, completely disconnected. But one night, as I opened my laptop to check school files, I logged into my bank account. I didn't expect anything anymore. But I needed to see it for myself. The transaction history was filled with regular withdrawals, each one just under $3,000 spread over nearly 11 months. Transfers to digital wallets, anonymous payment processors, a few to companies with names that sounded like online betting platforms. And then a few larger transfers to a personal account under the name T. Wright. I froze. T&T. Wright could only mean one person, Thomas. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through his recent post. Just a few weeks ago, he had posted on Instagram, standing smugly beside a white speedboat with the caption, "This summer is mine. #freedom, #boat life." I had seen it before, hadn't thought much. But now all the pieces were snapping together one by one, painting a painfully clear picture. I took screenshots of every transaction. The total amount withdrawn, $48,562. Almost identical to the listed price of the boat Thomas had posted. Called Mom. She had just gotten off her night shift, her voice still groggy. "Hello, Angie. Why are you calling this early?" I tried to stay calm. "Mom, did you know Dad emptied my entire college fund?" A long pause. Then she said quietly, "He said it was temporary. He told me you agreed." My stomach dropped. I never agreed. He never asked. "Do you know what he used the money for?" She didn't answer. I continued. "He funneled it into gambling apps and sent money to Thomas. Did you know Thomas just bought a boat?" I heard a heavy, tired exhale from the other end. "Your dad said Thomas was investing." I let out a bitter laugh. Investing? With my tuition money? With the money I saved working nights for 4 years? Mom didn't respond. I hung up. My throat felt tight, like something was squeezing the air out of me. The next day, I took a bus to the lakefront neighborhood where Thomas was living with a few friends in a rented house. I didn't tell him I was coming. When I arrived, he was in the backyard hosing down a boat, wearing sunglasses, music blaring. When he saw me, Thomas turned off the music and raised an eyebrow. "You feeling better? Why didn't you call first?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Did you buy that boat with my money?" He laughed. What? What are you talking about?" I held out my phone, scrolling down the transaction list. "This is my account. These are the transfers sent to you. That's your name. And that's the boat." His face went pale. But only for a few seconds. Then Thomas gave a nervous chuckle. "You're making a big deal out of this." "Yeah, Dad asked me to hold on to some money, but he said he'd pay it back." I spoke slowly, each word firm. "That was my tuition money. 4 years of working night shifts, of earning scholarships on my own. No one had the right to touch it." Thomas shrugged. "It's done. You're still young, you'll earn it back." A chill ran down my spine. The way he spoke, the indifference in his voice, like every sacrifice I'd made was nothing more than a few meaningless digits. I turned away without another word. But inside, something slammed shut. Something inside me had died. And from that place, something else began to rise. A will. A fire. I had spent years trying to earn their respect through patience. Now I would make them see me through strength. Not everyone born into your life deserves to stay there forever. And not everyone who stole your future gets to walk away without consequences. I came back from that confrontation with Thomas feeling emotionally numb. My mind kept spinning. The money lost, his blank stare, the click of every withdrawal, and Mom's silence. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the plain white ceiling as if being swallowed by a void with no end. The next day my father called. He rarely called me, so I knew this wasn't a casual check-in. Are you trying to shame me in front of the family? His voice was cold. Thomas told me you showed up and caused a scene. Why all the drama? It's a family matter. I kept my voice steady. No one has the right to take my money. No one. You betrayed me. He let out a bitter laugh. Betrayal? You're acting like I'm some criminal. You were in the hospital for 2 weeks. I had to handle everything. That money was just a loan. Families share the burden. You didn't tell me. You didn't ask. You knew that money was for my final year. You lied to me, I said, didn't lower my voice. You're so selfish, Angie, he snapped. You only think about yourself. You think going abroad for school makes you special? You've been living off family money and now you act ungrateful? I gripped the phone tightly, my lips trembling with anger. I earned that money. Part-time jobs, scholarships. Every dollar was mine. So what? I raised you all these years, isn't that enough? He growled. Now that you're grown and studying a little, you throw it in my face? Who taught you that kind of attitude? I wanted to say more, but my throat tightened. Not out of fear, because I finally realized everything I had done in his eyes would never be enough. And it never would be. The call ended with one final cruel sentence. You should be thankful this family still lets you come back. I sat motionless in my chair, phone still in hand, my heart heavy like I had just walked through a storm with no light in sight. Called Mom. I needed to hear another voice. Someone who had at least once hugged me before I left for America. She picked up after a few rings. Angie, what's going on? Your dad was furious this morning. I just want to ask you one thing, I said slowly, trying to keep my tears in. Do you believe I was betrayed? Or do you think, like Dad, that I should stay quiet and keep the peace? He paused, then sighed. Your father, he's been a hard man since childhood. I'm not defending him, but I understand why he did it. He never had the chances you do. So I have to pay the price for his childhood? I asked, bitterness creeping into my voice. Do you know that money was all I had left to finish college? Do you know how many jobs I've worked? How many nights I haven't slept over the past 3 years just to save every cent? And now what? He spent it all, and you're asking me to understand. She spoke softly, almost a whisper. I know you've worked hard. But this is our family, Angie. Don't let money destroy it. I bit my lip. What kind of family treats me like an ATM? On the other end, Mom didn't answer. I heard footsteps, a door closing. Maybe she was in the hospital break room. After a moment, she said, I just hope you can forgive. Forgive to ease your heart, not because they deserve it. I hung up, tears falling down my cheeks. I didn't cry from pain. I was used to pain. I cried because I was starting to realize no one was on my side. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not my brother. In the house I once called home, there was no place left for me. I picked up my notebook from the desk and flipped to a blank page. In neat handwriting I wrote, they took everything. But I still have the truth. And I won't stay silent. Then I underlined that line 3 times, bold and heavy. I didn't talk to anyone for nearly a week. No friends. No relatives. No family. During those days, it felt like all the sound around me was muffled under heavy water. But silence didn't mean surrender. Silence was my time to prepare. I wasn't acting out of expectation. I wasn't trying to please anyone. I was doing this for me. I started by closing the old bank account, the one I had co-owned with my father. I went to the bank with my ID and every document I had to prove that the money in that account was earned by me. A young employee named Lisa looked at me with sympathy as I briefly explained the situation. She said quietly, I had a client like you once. Her mom emptied her savings and disappeared. Sometimes family is worse than strangers. I nodded without replying, just signed the forms to close the account and open a new one at another bank. Every remaining dollar from my official scholarship account was transferred to a safe place. I updated my email password, school contact info, and rerouted all housing and tuition bills to the new card in my name only. Then I began gathering evidence. I reviewed the past 12 months of bank statements and downloaded every PDF copy. I grouped the transactions tied to e-wallets, gambling sites, and especially the transfers linked to the account named T. Wright, Thomas's legal name. I highlighted each item with a different color, added notes, and included a screenshot of the boat Thomas had posted on Instagram. The same day a transfer of more than $15,000 was made. I also captured screenshots of texts from my father. His admissions about borrowing the money, the message telling me not to tell mom, the one where he said, "Don't make a big deal out of it." I saved all of them in a folder titled, Evidence. Do not delete. I went to the student support office to ask about emergency aid programs. The counselor, a middle-aged woman, looked at me with genuine compassion as I briefly explained why I'd lost my tuition fund. "You'll need to submit a detailed statement and include the evidence," she said. "We'll forward it to the special review board." I sat in the library almost the entire day writing my statement. I didn't write with self-pity. I wrote with the clarity of someone who had suffered loss but refused to lose her dignity. I attached the bank statements, screenshots of messages, and a short account of my part-time jobs, scholarships, and my plans for senior year. 3 days later, I got an email from the student support office, inviting me to meet in person with a member of the board, Dr. Coleman, head of the economics department. I showed up to the meeting in a neatly ironed white blouse, my hair tied back, and a complete folder in hand. Coleman greeted me in his office with a gentle smile but sharp eyes. He was in his early 60s with salt and pepper hair and a warm, firm voice. "Angelina, I've gone through everything you submitted," he began. "I'm sorry you're going through this. But I want to ask you directly, what do you plan to do with the rest of this academic year?" I took a deep breath. "I'm not dropping out. I'll work more hours, take out a loan if I have to, but I'm graduating." Coleman nodded slowly. "That's the right answer." He handed me another folder. "This is an emergency aid package. It covers this semester's tuition and includes a small living stipend. No repayment required. But there's one condition: you must maintain your current GPA and join a fall research project." I was almost speechless. I don't even know what to say. "Thank you, sir." He raised his hand gently. I was the first in my family to go to college. My older brother stole my tuition money too. But I made it through. And so will you. Keep every piece of evidence. Don't let this disappear. I nodded. In his eyes, I saw something familiar: experience and a quiet belief in broken kids who still fought back. After the meeting, I stepped out into the sunlit campus courtyard. The breeze swept through my hair, and for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. I hadn't won, but I had gotten back up. And from that moment on, I wasn't just defending myself. I was preparing to fight back, calmly, deliberately. Because if there's anything I've learned, it's this: silence is a kind of complicity. And I wasn't going to be complicit anymore. After meeting with Dr. Coleman, it felt like I'd finally stepped onto solid ground after weeks of sinking. But I knew that to go any further, I couldn't just rely on help from the university. My father never thought I'd dare to push back. He always believed I'd be just like my mother, enduring, silent, adapting. But he was wrong. I decided to visit my grandmother, my mom's mother, Grandma Helen. I had never told her about any of this. But I remembered one moment clearly from 9th grade when she lived with us briefly. One evening, I heard her crying behind a closed door while my father held the house deed in his hand, speaking in a cold voice. "I told you this is the only way. If you won't sign, don't blame me later." She moved out soon after without a word. My mom said she just didn't like living with others. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon. Her house was in a suburb about an hour outside the city, roof shingles faded, but the front garden was neatly trimmed. She opened the door, eyes squinting in surprise when she saw me. "Angie, what's going on, sweetheart?" I didn't beat around the bush. Once inside, seated at the familiar kitchen table by the sunny window, I opened my laptop and showed her everything. The statements, my dad's messages, the photo of the boat Thomas posted. I told her the whole story, from the empty account to the family turning their backs. She didn't interrupt once, just sat there, hands trembling slightly around her cold tea. When I finished, she gently placed her hand over mine. At last, someone finally said it. I looked up at her. What do you mean? She leaned back in her chair with a long sigh. Decades ago, I gave your father my entire retirement savings, over $60,000, to start a small transport company. He promised to repay me in 2 years. I haven't seen a penny. I froze. Mom doesn't know about this? She shook her head. I wanted to tell her, but I was afraid. Afraid of breaking her heart. Your father's very skilled, Angie. Not at business, at making people feel guilty for even daring to question him. I clenched my fist. I can't let him keep doing this. I'm gathering proof to reclaim what he stole. But alone, my voice is small. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded firmly. Then let me help. This isn't just your fight anymore. She immediately called an old acquaintance, Mr. Michael Rivers, a civil and estate attorney who once worked with her after Grandpa passed. He agreed to meet us the next afternoon at his downtown office. The meeting with Mr. Rivers was a turning point. I laid out all the documents and he listened silently, taking notes and occasionally asking short questions. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs and spoke slowly. Legally, a joint account means the other holder can withdraw funds. But these messages, the transfers to unrelated parties and the personal use of those funds without informing the co-owner, this could support a civil case for breach of fiduciary duty. I sat up straight. What about the time he used my mom's house, under her name, as collateral without telling her? He looked at my grandmother. Mrs. Helen, your granddaughter is right. If the house was solely in your daughter's name and Mr. Richard used it as loan collateral without proper authorization, that would qualify as asset fraud. Grandma slowly pulled a folder from her purse. I've been thinking about this for a while, she said. These are the loan agreements, transfer slips, and the asset records from that time. I kept copies. I stared at her, nearly in tears. You kept all of this? I never believed he'd pay me back. I just never had the chance to speak. Rivers smiled faintly. Well then, now is the time to speak. We left his office as the sun was dipping low. In my hands was a folder filled with things never spoken aloud in our family. Secrets my father had buried. Things he believed no one would ever be bold enough to dig up. But he hadn't counted on me. And he never imagined the woman he once manipulated would now stand beside me. 2 generations, granddaughter and mother-in-law, united with one goal: to bring light to the shadows he had long thrived in. I returned to my dorm room late that evening, my mind racing. The legal folder from Mr. Rivers sat on the desk next to my laptop and the half-written complaint draft. I stared at the screen for a long while, then took a deep breath and opened the folder marked, Evidence. Do not delete. I knew the time had come. I opened my school email and drafted a letter to the administration, student support office and finance department. I didn't beg. I simply sent them proof, bank statements, the conversation with my father, the boat photo posted the same day he withdrew the funds, and a summary of my years of saving, working, and studying. At the end, I wrote just one line. If the student protection system cannot stand with those betrayed by their own families, then I don't know what it exists for. Then I logged into the alumni forum, a place once meant to connect students like me with past generations, share scholarships, jobs, life tips. I wrote a post using my real name. No drama. No self-pity. Just the truth and documents. The post title: I lost my college fund because of my father. Here's the story behind the boat my brother is sailing. The post was approved in less than 20 minutes. Within the hour, dozens of comments appeared. Some expressed outrage. Others shared that they had been through similar experiences. One alum, now a journalist at a local newspaper, left a contact email and asked for permission to cover the story. I hesitated but then nodded. If I had started this journey, I couldn't stop halfway. 3 days later, the article appeared on the front page under the Community Life section. A father drains his daughter's college fund to buy a boat for his son. The costly silence of an American family. The article didn't just mention me. It quoted Attorney Rivers, a representative from the university, and even Professor Coleman. Every detail was verified. They withheld my father's real name, but anyone who knew our family would immediately know who the article was about. That night my father called. The number was unfamiliar, but I recognized his voice the moment he spoke. What the hell are you doing? I stayed silent. You trying to shame your own father? This is a private matter. Family. Why would you drag the whole world into it? I answered calmly, you dragged the world in when you used my college fund to buy Thomas a fake badge of honor. That family threw me away already. He shouted, his voice furious. I lost my job. They suspended me because of that damn article. You just ruined me. I let out a dry laugh. No, you ruined yourself. I just shined a light on what you were hiding. He paused, then his tone changed. You're being emotional. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Providing for 2 kids, carrying the burden. I cut him off. You didn't carry anything for me. I got through school on scholarships, worked every evening, never asked you for a cent. And you drained my entire fund and acted like it was nothing. I hung up. Text messages started pouring in. First from him, then from Thomas, then a few paternal relatives. They asked why I had to make it a big deal. They brought up family honor. He's still your father. Keep it quiet for the bloodline's sake. But I didn't respond. That night, I received another unexpected call. This time from the financial oversight office where my father worked. A soft female voice confirmed they were launching an internal investigation and asked if I was willing to provide more documentation. I agreed. The next day my mother called. She spoke softly as if afraid someone might overhear. Angie, your dad, he's lost everything. How far do you plan to take this? Without hesitation I said, all the way. Mom, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it because I don't want anyone else to be silenced like you were, like I was. She cried silently. Then whispered, then, do what you know is right. I ended the call and opened my window. The September night air rushed in, cool but not cold. I knew the winds would only grow stronger from here. But at least I wasn't running. And I wasn't alone. The truth had found its voice, and no one could silence it again. About a week after the article went viral and my father was suspended, my mother called to meet at a small cafe near the hospital where she worked. I arrived on time, but she was already there, clutching an untouched cup of coffee. Her face looked pale, her eyes sunken, like someone who had just awoken from a lifelong sleepwalk. When I sat down, she looked up straight into my eyes. Not like before, no deflection, no pretending. Her gaze was steady. And for the first time, I didn't see a woman shrinking behind a man. I saw a mother shedding the last mask to finally face the truth. You were right, she began, voice trembling but firm. I stayed quiet too long. Out of fear. Out of habit. I thought enduring it was part of being a wife. I held her hand. She didn't pull away. She looked down at her coffee and slowly shook her head. 2 days ago I got a letter from the bank, she continued. Said a loan in my name was due. I never took out a loan. I thought it was a mistake. But when I went to the bank, they had the contract. With a signature. It was forged. I froze. He used your name to borrow money? She nodded. $30,000. Last year. Not a single payment has been made. The money went straight into one of his side accounts. When I asked him, he said it was short-term investment, then told me to stay out of financial matters. My hands clenched. My eyes burned. With anger. With grief. But this time I wasn't alone. What are you going to do? I asked. I filed for divorce this morning. And I signed over power of attorney so Attorney Rivers can represent me in the asset case. I went still. That sentence, from my own mother who I had never once seen stand up for herself, made me want to cry right there in the cafe. I don't know what to say. She looked at me and gently squeezed my hand. You don't need to say anything. Just know I'm on your side now. And on mine too. That afternoon we met with Attorney Rivers along with Grandma. In a small conference room filled with files and soft yellow lighting, 3 generations of women sat side by side that I felt something powerful rising from the very people who once endured in silence. Attorney Rivers listened to all the new developments. Then he pulled a folder from his drawer. We've just received confirmation from Mr. Richard's former employer. They're launching an investigation into his personal account due to signs of abusing his position to solicit unauthorized investments. Grandma smirked. Not surprised. He turned to my mom. The divorce filing this morning will help separate assets sooner. If we can prove he forged your signature for the loan, there's a strong chance you won't be held legally liable for that debt. Also, the fact that he emptied Angelina's college fund without consent could be used to increase damages in civil court. My mom nodded, oddly calm. I'm not after assets. I just want to reclaim the years I lost choosing to stay silent. After the meeting, she went home to pack. She texted me close to midnight. Don't worry. I'm not turning back. No one's chained by his silence anymore. The next day, Grandma brought me to her house for a few days, to stay away from tension as media began circling. Less than a week later, a local news station asked for an interview, but I declined. I didn't need an audience. I needed justice. Grandma, on the other hand, called an old friend who once worked in City Hall. After one lunch meeting, we received a request to submit documents to the city's Ethics Oversight Committee. They wanted to investigate whether my father used his financial industry connections to manipulate illegal loans. The investigation expanded. The loans in my mother's name were just the start. Other accounts surfaced. Loans under former clients' names, even names of deceased acquaintances, like ink stains spreading on white paper once forced into silence. The paternal side of the family began to splinter. Some defended my father, accusing me of airing dirty laundry. But most started to see the truth. They no longer called me the girl who embarrassed the family. They called me the one who dared to speak. And my mother, the woman who once trembled at my father's raised voice, was now the one mailing every hidden receipt and forged paper directly to our lawyer. I saw her walk with her shoulders back. No flinching. No bowing. She was no longer the shadow of a man who thought he was the center of the universe. I knew that ever since she signed the divorce papers that morning, I was no longer fighting alone. And I understood that sometimes, the strongest resistance doesn't begin with shouting, but with the quiet voice that finally dares to say, enough. The first civil hearing took place on a Monday morning in December, inside a small county courtroom. There was no media frenzy, but the room was packed with people from both sides of my family, each face marked with judgment, curiosity, or discomfort. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Attorney Rivers and my mother. Across the aisle, my father sat pale-faced, unable to make eye contact. Thomas wasn't present. His legal representative informed the court that he was cooperating in a separate investigation involving assets under another person's name. I thought I would shake, get angry, or lose my composure. But when I was called to testify, all I felt was a deep stillness within me. Not emptiness, just a silence that only comes after you've lost enough to know there's nothing left to fear. I presented everything, clearly and firmly. Each verified bank transfer, every text message from my father, proof of transactions with Thomas, screenshots of social media posts, and even photos of the boat registered in my brother's name, purchased at the exact time the money was withdrawn. I submitted statements from Professor Coleman and official records from my school confirming my emergency aid request. I ended with a printed bank statement I had pulled myself, showing the final line. Balance, $0 on the day I was still in the ICU. The judge, a sharp, composed woman in her 50s, flipped through the documents in silence for a long moment before raising her eyes to my father. Do you deny having made these transactions? My father adjusted his collar and swallowed hard. I just borrowed it. It was a joint account. I had legal access. But legal access is not the same as moral authority, she replied evenly. And in this case, your actions show a deliberate abuse of trust to serve personal gain, especially when the joint account holder was out of the country and not informed. Attorney Rivers stood up and handed over another file. These are loan documents in the name of Mrs. Elaine Wright. The defendant forged his wife's signature to secure credit, deposited into a secondary account now in default. We've confirmed this with the bank and have a signature comparison report. The judge furrowed her brow. So we're dealing not with one but at least 3 financial violations: unauthorized withdrawals, forgery to obtain credit, and transfer of funds to a third party, in this case the son who had no legal access to the account. On the defendant's side, my father began to shift restlessly. He no longer held the commanding presence he once had during family dinners where he'd lecture us on discipline and responsibility. Here in court he was just a middle-aged man crumbling under the weight of the truth he had spent years trying to bury. Next came the witness testimonies. My mother stood first, her voice trembling but eyes unwavering. She recounted every time she was told to stay quiet for the family's sake, every loan paper she never signed, and all the nights she watched her daughter stay up late juggling studies and part-time jobs, unnoticed by anyone in the house. Then my grandmother spoke, her voice steady, her gaze direct. "He didn't just take his daughter's money," she said, staring straight at my father. "He stole her trust. And that's something no bank in the world can restore." When the court recessed for a break, I stepped into the hallway and noticed a small group whispering nearby. Among them were two of my paternal aunts, once very close to my father. One looked at me and turned away. The other approached, took my hand and gently squeezed it. "You did the right thing. Your aunt lost all her retirement savings to him." She stayed silent out of fear of shaming the family. Before I could respond, they had walked away and disappeared into the crowd. That afternoon, the judge delivered her preliminary ruling. My father was ordered to repay the full amount he withdrew from the joint account, along with interest and damages for emotional distress. He was also required to compensate my mother for forgery and held legally liable for all improper loans. The matter involving Thomas was transferred to the state's Financial Investigation Bureau due to signs of collusion and fiduciary abuse. I sat motionless as the judgment was read, not triumphant. I didn't need my father to fall to his knees in apology. I didn't need applause. I just needed the truth to be acknowledged, clearly, without excuse. On the drive home, my mother turned to me, her voice low but firm. "You pulled this family out of the mud. You didn't just save yourself." I looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange-red like flames licking the horizon. One life chapter was ending, not through submission but through justice. The day I received my honors degree from the dean, the applause echoed throughout the auditorium, but in my ears I could only hear one sound: the whispered voice of myself huddled in a hospital bed, aching in both body and soul as pieces of my future crumbled away. In that moment, standing tall on stage with the spotlight on my face and the graduation robe fluttering in the air conditioning, I felt calm. No tears. No anxiety. Just a strange, quiet certainty. I had returned to myself, but I was no longer the same. My mother stood in the front row, her hand resting over her heart as if trying to hold together something fragile inside. She no longer wore those old gray clothes. Today she wore a deep blue dress, adorned with a silver brooch, the wedding gift she once hid away from my father. Every step I took toward her after the ceremony, her eyes quietly said, "You did what I never dared to dream." Grandma was different. She waited for me under the big oak tree in the school courtyard, the same wooden bench where we had sat 8 months ago to talk about the lawsuit. When I walked up to her, she opened her arms and hugged me tightly, as if letting go would somehow make everything I had just achieved disappear. "You didn't just reclaim justice," she whispered, her hand gently brushing my back. "You changed the course of this entire family." I smiled through blurry eyes. "I just didn't want to stay silent anymore, Grandma." "And because of you," she replied, "now none of us are staying silent." After graduation, I received a job offer from a strategic consulting firm in New York. It wasn't the most prestigious role or the highest paying among my graduating class. But to me it was validation. A place to begin, not in the shadow of a family name but with the strength of my own voice. The night before I left, Grandma hosted a small farewell party in the backyard. String lights hung across the wooden fence. The tablecloth was white with my name embroidered in red thread. The scent of cinnamon pastries, warm apple cider, and soft music filled the garden. Close relatives from my mother's side came, a few classmates, even Professor Coleman showed up, bringing a handwritten card. "Your courage will be a beacon for generations to come." Near the end of the evening, as glasses were empty and laughter faded into the cool night breeze, my mother handed me an envelope. No name on the outside, just a short note written in familiar handwriting. "To my daughter, I hope you can forgive me." I opened it. A handwritten letter. My father's handwriting. "Angelina, by the time you read this, you may have graduated. You may have left home. You may have walked away from everything I once believed was family. I know I was wrong. I know I hurt you, your mother, and even myself. But looking back, I see only one thing. I lost the only daughter who ever tried to carry the right name with dignity. If there's even the slightest chance, I hope you can forgive me. Your father." I read to the end, then folded the letter neatly, like someone folding away a memory. I stood, walked to the small bonfire burning in the center of the yard. Everyone else was chatting nearby. No one noticed. I looked at the flames for a few seconds, then dropped the letter into the glowing red. The paper curled, shriveled, then vanished into ash. Not because I had never loved him, but because now I loved myself more. Forgiveness doesn't mean keeping the one who hurt you close. Forgiveness is learning to let go, without needing anything in return. On the flight to New York the next morning, I sat by the window, watching clouds drift past like dreams once shattered, now slowly stitching themselves back together. There was no more bitterness in my heart. Only relief. I thought about the journey. The moment I first saw my empty bank account. The fear in my mother's eyes in court. Grandma's hand gripping mine before graduation. They didn't feel like wounds anymore. They were proof I had made it through. Some losses help you rediscover who you are. And some betrayals open the road to freedom. If you've stayed with me all the way to the end of this story, maybe somewhere in your heart there's also a scar. A broken promise, a silence that stretched too long, or a loved one who should have protected you but ended up hurting you the most. What do you think of my choice? If it were you, would you have stayed silent to keep the peace, or would you have stood up like I did, to claim justice not just for yourself but for those who no longer have the strength to speak? I want to hear your story. Leave a comment below. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave voice to help hundreds feel less alone on their own path. And if you're drawn to honest, heartfelt stories about family, loss, choices, and growth, don't forget to follow this channel so we can keep exploring the many layers of life together in future episodes. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just hurt, it sets you free.